The rain hit Harper Rivera's face like tiny needles as she sprinted down Fifth Avenue, her worn sneakers splashing through puddles that soaked through to her socks. She clutched the pizza delivery bag against her chest, praying the 3 pies inside hadn't turned into a soggy mess that would cost her another week's tips. The address on her phone screen blurred under the downpour, but she could make out the building number just ahead, a towering glass structure that seemed to pierce the storm clouds above. Harper burst through the revolving doors, dripping water across marble floors so polished she could see her reflection. A security guard looked up from his desk, his expression shifting from annoyance to something softer when he saw her shivering frame. "Pizza delivery for the penthouse," she gasped, holding up the bag like a shield. He nodded toward the private elevator. "They're expecting you. Use the gold doors on the right." The elevator ride felt like ascending into another dimension. Harper watched the numbers climb past floors she'd never dreamed of reaching, past entire lives lived in luxury she couldn't imagine. She worked 3 jobs just to keep her studio apartment in the Bronx, just to send money home to her mom and younger brother in their rundown neighborhood, where broken streetlights and boarded windows were as common as corner stores. The doors opened directly into a penthouse that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the New York skyline, rain streaming down the glass like a living waterfall. The space was all clean lines and expensive furniture, the kind she'd only seen in magazines left behind at the diner where she waitressed. Finally, a sharp voice called from somewhere deeper in the apartment. "Put them in the kitchen and leave the receipt." Harper followed the voice, her wet shoes squeaking embarrassingly on hardwood floors that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. She found the kitchen, which was larger than her entire apartment, and set the pizzas on a marble counter that felt cool under her pruned fingertips. A woman in a designer dress appeared, tapping on her phone with manicured nails. She barely glanced at Harper as she pulled out a credit card. "The tips included. You can go." Harper nodded, used to being invisible to people like this. She turned to leave, but her foot caught on the strap of her own bag, and she went down hard, her hand instinctively grabbing for purchase. She caught the edge of a bar stool, but her momentum sent a crystal vase tumbling from the counter. Time seemed to slow as the vase fell and Harper's heart stopped. Then a hand shot out, catching it inches from the floor. "Nice reflexes," a deep voice said, and Harper looked up into eyes the color of smoke and steel. The man who'd caught the vase straightened, and Harper had to crane her neck to meet his gaze. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. He wore jeans and a simple black sweater, but something about the way he carried himself spoke of confidence and power. He set the vase carefully back on the counter, then extended a hand to help Harper up. "I'm so sorry," Harper stammered, accepting his hand. His grip was warm and steady, and when she was on her feet, he didn't immediately let go. "For what? Gravity?" His mouth curved into a slight smile. "I'm pretty sure that one's not on you. Keith, stop flirting with the delivery girl and come help me set up," the woman called from the other room. "Your investors are going to be here in 20 minutes, Keith." Harper filed the name away as he finally released her hand. "You should get out of those wet clothes," he said, his tone matter of fact. "You'll catch pneumonia." "I have 2 more deliveries," Harper said, checking her phone. Her heart sank. Both were at least 30 blocks away. "I should go." "In this weather," Keith moved to the window, gesturing at the storm that had intensified, wind now driving the rain sideways against the glass. "That's not safe." "I need the money," Harper said simply, then immediately wished she hadn't. She didn't need his pity, something shifted in his expression. "Wait here a second." He disappeared before Harper could protest, returning moments later with a jacket that looked expensive and felt like butter when he draped it over her shoulders. "Just borrow it. You can return it next time you deliver." "I can't." "You can and you will. Otherwise I'll worry about you all night, and I've got enough to worry about with these investors." His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way that made Harper's stomach flip unexpectedly. The woman appeared in the doorway again. "Keith Donovan, I swear if you don't," she stopped, eyes narrowing at Harper. "Are you still here?" "She's leaving," Keith said, his tone cooling noticeably. He turned back to Harper, voice warm again. "Be careful out there." Harper nodded, pulling the jacket tighter around herself as she headed for the elevator. Only when she was back on the street, the expensive fabric shielding her from the worst of the rain, did she process what the woman had said. Keith Donovan. The name tickled something in the back of her mind, but she was too focused on making her next delivery to pursue the thought. 3 days later, Harper stood in front of the same building, the borrowed jacket cleaned and carefully folded in her backpack. She'd looked up Keith Donovan after her shift that night, and her cheap phone had nearly frozen trying to load all the articles about him. Real estate mogul, self-made billionaire by 30. The man who'd caught a vase to save her from paying for it could probably buy the entire building she lived in, without noticing the dent in his bank account. The knowledge should have made this easier, should have reinforced the wall between their worlds. Instead, Harper felt nervous in a way that had nothing to do with the doorman's scrutinizing gaze as she explained she needed to return something to the penthouse. "Mr. Donovan isn't in," the doorman said. "I can take that for you." "Oh." Harper felt disappointment wash over her, which was stupid. What had she expected? "Okay, thank you. Wait." The doorman held up a finger, pressing his earpiece. His expression shifted. "Apparently he's just arrived. You can go up if you'd like." Harper's heart hammered as the elevator climbed once more. The doors opened, and this time Keith was standing right there in the foyer, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her car. He'd been about to head out, his phone in one hand and keys in the other, but his face lit up when he saw her. "The pizza girl," he said, and there was genuine pleasure in his voice. "I was hoping you'd come back. I wanted to return your jacket." Harper pulled it from her backpack, holding it out. "Thank you. It really helped that night." Keith took the jacket but didn't look at it, his eyes fixed on her face. How were the other deliveries? Wet but successful. Harper shifted her weight, suddenly aware of her faded jeans and the hole in the sleeve of her sweater. "I should let you go." "You look like you're heading somewhere important. A meeting that's going to bore me to tears," Keith said. He glanced at his watch, then back at her, seeming to make a decision. "Have you had lunch?" Harper blinked. "What? Lunch, food, the meal between breakfast and dinner." His smile was slightly crooked, boyish in a way that didn't match his tailored exterior. "Have you eaten?" "I was going to grab something from the bodega near my next shift. Cancel it." "I can't just cancel work. I mean cancel the bodega. Have lunch with me instead. There's this place a few blocks away that makes the best Cuban sandwiches in the city." He must have seen her hesitation because he added, "I promise I'm not some creep. We'll go somewhere public and you can leave whenever you want. I just think you're interesting and I'd like to talk to you." No pressure. Harper should have said no. She should have politely declined, thanked him again, and gone back to her world where billionaires existed only in headlines and daydreams. But something in his expression, hopeful and slightly uncertain, made her say yes instead. The restaurant was small and crowded, nothing fancy despite the neighborhood. Keith led her to a corner booth and ordered in Spanish that flowed naturally, chatting with the older woman who took their order like they were old friends. "You come here a lot," Harper observed. "My mom used to bring me here when I was a kid," Keith said. "Before she passed away, This neighborhood wasn't always this expensive. We lived about 3 blocks from here in a place that would have made your toes curl. 1 bedroom, 5 of us crammed in there. Harper's surprise must have shown because Keith leaned back, his expression turning slightly defensive. You looked me up, didn't you? Yeah, Harper admitted. No point in lying. Kind of hard to miss the whole billionaire thing. The articles always make it sound so clean. Poor kid makes good, pulls himself up by his bootstraps, all that American dream garbage. Keith's jaw tightened. They don't mention that my dad worked himself to death in a factory when I was 14. They don't mention that I dropped out of school to work construction, that I lived in my car for 2 years while I saved every penny to buy my first property. A rundown apartment building in Queens, Harper said quietly. I read about that part. You renovated it yourself. Turned it into something people could actually be proud to live in. Keith's expression softened. Made enough profit to buy another building, then another, but I never forgot what it felt like to choose between fixing the heating or buying groceries. Is that why you insisted I take your jacket? Harper asked. Because you knew what it was like. I insisted because the thought of you getting sick bothered me more than it should have, considering I just met you. Keith held her gaze. And because I wanted an excuse to see you again. Heat rose in Harper's cheeks. You don't know anything about me. Then tell me. He leaned forward, genuine interest in his eyes. Who is Harper, the pizza delivery girl? Harper Rivera, waitress, dog walker, and occasional pizza delivery person, she corrected. I'm 24, originally from the Bronx, still living in the Bronx. My mom raised me and my brother alone after my dad left. I was going to City College studying business, but had to drop out last year when my mom got sick and the medical bills piled up. I'm sorry, Keith said, and it didn't sound like empty politeness. She's better now, mostly, but I'm still playing catch-up financially. My brother is 16 and smart as hell, and I'm going to make sure he gets to finish high school and go to college, even if I have to work every job in this city. Harper surprised herself with her own vehemence. That's a lot of weight for one person to carry, Keith said gently. We all carry what we have to. Harper took a bite of her sandwich to avoid his eyes. It was delicious, the pork tender and perfectly seasoned. Oh my God, this is amazing. Right? Keith's whole face transformed when he grinned, years falling away. I've tried to buy this recipe off Maria for years. She always tells me some things can't be bought. They talked through lunch, then through coffee that appeared without them ordering it, then through the afternoon as the lunch crowd thinned and the dinner prep began. Keith told her about his 3 siblings, scattered now across the country but still close. Harper told him about growing up in a neighborhood where people looked out for each other because they had to, where community meant everything. I should go, Harper said finally, checking her phone and nearly dropping it when she saw the time. I'm going to be late for my shift at the diner. Can I see you again? Keith asked, standing with her. And before you list all the reasons why that's a bad idea, just know I've already thought of them too, and I don't care about any of them. We're from completely different worlds, Harper said, but her protest sounded weak even to her own ears. We're from the same world. I just have more money now. Keith pulled out his phone. Give me your number, please. Harper hesitated, then rattled off her digits. Keith's phone buzzed a moment later with a text from her number. This is me saying yes to seeing you again, she said, and probably being an idiot. If you're an idiot, then I am too. Keith walked her to the door, his hand resting briefly on the small of her back, warm even through her sweater. Text me when you get off work. I want to make sure you got home safe. You don't have to worry about me. Too late, Keith said. I already do. Harper thought about that all through her dinner shift, through serving burgers and fries to tired families and impatient businessmen. She thought about it on the subway home, crammed between commuters who looked as exhausted as she felt. She thought about it as she climbed the 4 flights to her apartment, the elevator broken again. She texted him from her couch, her feet throbbing, made it home safely. "Thanks for lunch." His response came immediately. "Thanks for the company. It was the best afternoon I've had in months." "Sleep well, Harper." She stared at his message for a long moment, something warm and terrifying unfurling in her chest, before she typed back, "You too, Keith." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments between Harper's shifts. Coffee before her morning waitressing job. A walk through Central Park on her day off. A late dinner after she finished dog walking, when Keith appeared outside the building of her last client with takeout from a Thai place he swore would change her life. He was right about the Thai food. He was right about a lot of things, Harper was discovering. He was also funny and thoughtful and surprisingly down to earth for someone who could afford to buy a small country. He never made her feel less than, never flaunted his wealth or made her uncomfortable about their different circumstances. "Come to this thing with me," Keith said one evening, catching her hand as they walked along the river. The sun was setting, painting the water gold and orange. "It's a charity gala. Normally, I'd rather have teeth pulled, but it might be bearable with you there." "I don't have anything to wear to a gala," Harper said immediately. "I'll take care of that. Keith, before you get all proud on me, hear me out." He turned to face her, his hands settling on her waist. They'd been touching more lately, casual brushes and held hands that felt anything but casual to Harper. "This is a work thing for me. I have to go, have to schmooze with investors and donors and pretend I care about their vacation homes in the Hamptons. You coming with me would actually be helping me out. And yes, that means I'll handle the dress because you'd be doing me a favor." "That's a very convenient way to frame it," Harper said, but she was smiling. "I'm a businessman. I'm good at negotiations." Keith's thumbs traced small circles on her hip bones and Harper's breath caught. They hadn't kissed yet, despite the electricity that sparked whenever they were close. "Say yes, Harper." "This is a bad idea," she whispered. "Probably." Keith leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. "Say yes anyway." "Yes." His smile was brilliant and brief before his mouth found hers. The kiss was gentle at first, almost questioning, but when Harper's hands fisted in his shirt and pulled him closer, it deepened into something that made her dizzy. He tasted like the coffee they'd shared, warm and slightly sweet, and when they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "I've wanted to do that since the moment you nearly destroyed that vase," Keith admitted, his voice rough. "Really. When you caught it and I was dying of embarrassment. When you looked up at me with those eyes and I forgot my own name for a second." He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring. "I'm in trouble, Harper Rivera." "Me too," she said against his lips. The dress arrived 2 days before the gala, delivered to her apartment by a nervous-looking courier who clearly wasn't used to her building. Harper opened the box on her bed, tissue paper crinkling as she lifted out midnight blue silk that seemed to shimmer in the light. It was stunning and perfectly her size, with a note in Keith's handwriting, blue like the sky right before the stars come out. "See you Saturday at 7. Harper held the dress against herself, looking in the mirror that hung on her closet door. The woman looking back seemed like a stranger, someone who belonged in Keith's world of galas and charity events. But when she thought about Keith's kiss, about the way he looked at her like she was something precious, the stranger's face softened into someone Harper recognized. Someone hopeful. Someone falling in love despite every logical reason not to. Saturday evening, Harper stood in front of her mirror again, this time wearing the dress and feeling like she might throw up from nerves. Her roommate, Melissa, had helped with her makeup and hair, pinning dark curls up to show the elegant line of Harper's neck. "You look like a princess," Melissa said, handing Harper a small clutch they'd borrowed from Melissa's sister. "Keith is going to lose his mind." "I feel like I'm playing dress up," Harper admitted. "You're not playing anything. You're just showing the world what he already sees." Melissa squeezed her shoulder. "Have fun, okay? You deserve this." Keith's reaction when she opened the door to his knock made the nerves worth it. He went completely still, his eyes traveling from her face down to her silver heels and back up, slow and appreciative. "Harper," he said, her name sounding like a prayer. "You're going to give me a heart attack." "You look pretty good yourself," Harper managed. He wore a tuxedo like he'd been born to it, all sharp lines and confident elegance. "Ready to introduce me to your world, ready to introduce you as mine if that's okay." Keith offered his arm. "Fair warning, people are going to be curious and possibly rude. Stay close to me. Deal?" The gala was held at a museum. The marble halls transformed with flowers and string lights into something magical. Harper tried not to gawk at the famous faces she recognized from movies and magazines. The jewels that probably cost more than her yearly income. The casual wealth on display in every detail. Keith kept his promise, staying at her side as they navigated through the crowd. He introduced her to so many people that Harper stopped trying to remember names, just smiled and made small talk about the weather and the beautiful venue. Most people were polite if slightly puzzled by her presence. A few were openly curious. "So how do you know Keith?" A woman in diamonds asked, her tone suggesting she already knew Harper didn't belong. "We met through work," Harper said smoothly. "Oh, are you in real estate too?" "Actually, I deliver pizzas to his building," Harper said, deciding honesty was easier than trying to navigate whatever game this woman was playing. "Best decision I ever made." The woman's expression was priceless, and Keith choked on his champagne beside her. "You're terrible," he murmured in Harper's ear as the woman made her excuses and fled. "I love it." "I wasn't going to lie. Good. Never do." Keith set down his glass and took her hand. "Dance with me." The orchestra was playing something slow and romantic. Keith led Harper onto the floor, pulling her into his arms with a confidence that suggested he knew how to do this. Harper, who'd learned the basics in high school gym class, let him lead and tried not to step on his expensive shoes. "Relax," Keith said softly. "Just follow me." "Easy for you to say. You probably took lessons." "My mom taught me in our tiny apartment. She'd put on records and make me and my siblings practice with each other. Said dancing was important, a way to connect with people." Keith's eyes were warm as he looked down at Harper. "She would have liked you." "Yeah." Harper's throat felt tight. She valued hard work and honesty. She believed in taking care of family and fighting for what mattered. Keith spun Harper gently, then pulled her back in closer than before. "She would have seen what I see." "What do you see?" Harper asked, though she wasn't sure she was ready for the answer. "Someone brave. Someone who gives everything she has to the people she loves. Someone beautiful inside and out." Keith's hand tightened on her waist. "Someone I'm falling for way too fast." "Keith," Harper started, but he shook his head. "You don't have to say anything, I just wanted you to know." He smiled, but there was vulnerability in it. "Is that okay?" "It's okay," Harper whispered. "It's more than okay because I'm falling too and it scares me." "Why?" "Because this doesn't work in real life. The girl from the wrong side of town doesn't end up with the billionaire. That's a fairy tale." "What if I told you that every fairy tale has some truth in it?" Keith pulled her closer, his cheek resting against her temple as they swayed. "What if I told you that where you come from doesn't matter to me, that who you are is everything I want?" "I'd say you're too good to be true." "I'm not. I'm selfish and demanding, and I work too much. I have days where I'm impossible to deal with." I carry guilt about having money when people I grew up with are still struggling. I push too hard and care too much, and Harper reached up, cupping his face with one hand. You're human. So am I. Maybe that's enough. Keith turned his head, kissing her palm. Stay with me tonight. The request sent electricity down Harper's spine. Keith, just stay. Talk to me until the sun comes up. Let me know you better. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I just want more time with you. His gray eyes were sincere. Please. Harper thought of her small apartment waiting across the city, of the early shift she had at the diner. Then she thought of every moment she'd spent with Keith, how he made her laugh and challenged her thinking and looked at her like she mattered. Okay, she said. I'll stay. They left the gala shortly after, Keith making their excuses to the organizers. The penthouse was dark when they arrived, just the city lights streaming through the windows. Keith shrugged out of his jacket, loosening his bow tie as he moved to the kitchen. Tea, wine. I make a mean hot chocolate if you're interested. Hot chocolate sounds perfect, Harper said, slipping off her heels with a sigh of relief. Her feet were screaming. Can I ask you something? Anything, Keith said, pulling ingredients from cabinets. Why me? You could have anyone. Someone who fits into your world, who knows how to navigate galas and charity events without feeling like an imposter. Keith was quiet for a moment, focused on heating milk on the stove. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. Remember how I told you about living in my car? About working construction and barely scraping by? He looked up at her. I had a girlfriend then, or I thought I did. When I bought that first building and started making real money, she was excited. When I made my first million, she was thrilled. But somewhere along the way, she fell in love with what I had, not who I was. The moment things got hard, when I had a deal fall through and lost a chunk of my savings, she left. That's awful, Harper said. It taught me something important. The people who want you for your money will never see the real you. They'll see the suits and the penthouse and the bank account. Keith poured hot chocolate into 2 mugs, adding a mountain of whipped cream to each. He handed one to Harper, his fingers brushing hers. You saw me before you knew about any of that. You talked to me like I was just a person, not a meal ticket or a stepping stone. Do you know how rare that is? You are just a person, Harper said. A person who happens to have more zeros in his bank account than I have dollars, but still. You're Keith, who loves his family and remembers his mom and tips really well and catches falling vases. See, that right there. Keith moved closer, setting his mug down so he could frame Harper's face with both hands. You don't care about the money. You care about me. And when you look at me, I feel like maybe I'm worth something beyond what I've built. You are, Harper said fiercely. You're worth everything. Keith kissed her then, deep and slow, tasting of chocolate and promise. Harper set her own mug down blindly, wrapping her arms around his neck as he lifted her, her legs coming around his waist. He carried her to the couch, setting her down gently before following her down, his weight solid and right above her. They kissed until Harper lost track of time, until her dress was rumpled and Keith's shirt was half unbuttoned, until they were both flushed and breathless. When Keith pulled back, his eyes were dark with want but also something softer. We should slow down, he said roughly. I meant it when I said I wasn't asking for more than you want to give. What if I want to give everything? Harper asked, her heart pounding. Then I'd say I'm the luckiest man alive, but I'd still want to wait. Not because I don't want you, trust me on that. He shifted and Harper could feel exactly how much he wanted her. But because when we do this, I want it to be perfect. I want you to be sure. I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. You're really testing my self-control here, Harper said, but she was smiling. Welcome to my world. Keith kissed her forehead, then rolled to the side, pulling her against his chest. Tell me about your brother. What's his name? They talked through the night, trading stories and dreams and fears. Harper told Keith about her brother Marco, about his love for science and his dreams of becoming an engineer. Keith told her about his siblings, about Sunday dinners that happened over video calls now that everyone was scattered, about missing the closeness they'd once had. "You ever regret it?" Harper asked as the sky outside began to lighten. "Building all this, leaving that old life behind." "I don't think I left it behind so much as carried it with me," Keith said. "Everything I do now is informed by where I came from. The buildings I buy, I renovate them to be affordable, to be places people can actually build lives. The charities I support focus on education and opportunities for kids from neighborhoods like where I grew up. I use what I have to try to make things better." "That's beautiful," Harper said softly. "That's survival. If I don't do something meaningful with all this money, then what's the point? I watched my dad kill himself working for pennies. I watched my mom stretch every dollar until it screamed. I can't just sit in this penthouse and pretend that's not still happening to people." Keith's voice was passionate, his arms tightening around Harper. "I want to build something that lasts, something that helps." "You already are," Harper said, tilting her head to kiss his jaw. "And not just with buildings and charities. You're helping me believe that maybe good things can happen. That maybe I don't have to do everything alone." "You don't. Not anymore." Keith shifted so they were face to face, his expression serious. "I know it's fast and I know we're still learning each other, but Harper, I need you to know something. This isn't casual for me. You're not casual for me." "I know," Harper whispered. "You're not casual for me either. Good, because I'm planning to stick around and I hope you are too." "I'm not going anywhere," Harper promised. The next few weeks proved her words. Harper and Keith fell into a rhythm, finding pockets of time in their vastly different schedules. Keith showed up at the diner during Harper's shifts, sitting in her section and leaving tips that made her argue with him in the parking lot afterward. Harper learned to navigate Keith's world, attending occasional dinners and events, learning which fork to use and how to make small talk with people who had never worried about making rent. But they also existed in the spaces between their worlds. Late-night walks through neighborhoods where Keith had grown up, where he pointed out landmarks of his childhood. Early morning runs in parks near Harper's apartment, where she showed him the courts where she and Marco used to play basketball. They cooked together in Keith's massive kitchen, Harper teaching him her mother's recipes while Keith attempted to recreate the Cuban sandwiches from Maria's restaurant. "This is terrible," Keith said, staring at his creation. "How did I mess up a sandwich?" "You put way too much mustard and I think you forgot to press it." Harper took a bite anyway, trying not to make a face. "It's very enthusiastic though, enthusiastically bad." Keith dumped the sandwich in the trash. "Pizza, always pizza." 2 months in, Harper brought Keith to meet her mother and brother. She was more nervous about this than she'd been about any gala, pacing her childhood living room while Keith sat comfortably on the worn couch, chatting with Marco about a science fair project. "I like him," her mother Rosa said in rapid Spanish, pulling Harper into the kitchen. "He looks at you like you hung the moon. Mama, he's a billionaire with a B. So, your father was a janitor and I loved him with everything I had until he decided to leave. Money doesn't make the man, baby." "Character does." Rosa cupped Harper's face. "This one has character, I can see it, and more importantly, I can see that you love him." "Is it that obvious to a mother always?" Rosa smiled. "Does he know?" "I haven't said it yet." "Why not?" "Because saying it makes it real. Makes it something I can lose." Harper blinked back tears. "What if this doesn't work? What if the class difference does matter? Then you'll survive because you're my daughter and we're survivors. But Harper, what if it does work? What if you get to be happy? Are you going to run from that because you're scared?" Rosa squeezed Harper's hands. Your father left because he was a coward who couldn't handle his own life. Don't let his cowardice make you afraid of yours. Harper hugged her mother tightly, then returned to the living room where Keith and Marco were now playing video games, trash-talking each other cheerfully. Keith looked up when Harper entered, his smile immediate and warm, and something settled in her chest. Later, as they walked back to Keith's car, Marco having extracted a promise from Keith to come to his science fair, Keith took Harper's hand. Your family is wonderful, he said. Your mom is terrifying in the best way, and your brother is going to do amazing things. They liked you too. Marco never warms up to people that fast. Maybe he recognized a kindred spirit. We both love someone pretty incredible. Keith stopped walking, turning Harper to face him under a streetlight. I love you, Harper. I know it's fast, and I know it might be scary, but I can't not say it anymore. I love you. Harper's breath caught, tears pricking her eyes. I love you too. I've been scared to say it, scared of what it means, but Keith, I love you so much. He kissed her then, deep and sweet, and Harper felt like she was floating. When they broke apart, both grinning like fools, a group of teenagers walking past whooped and applauded. Come home with me, Keith said. Really come home with me this time. Harper knew what he was asking, knew what had been building between them for months. Yes. They barely made it through the door of the penthouse before they were kissing again, urgent now, months of wanting finally unleashed. Keith walked Harper backward toward his bedroom, pausing only to kiss her neck, her shoulders, every inch of exposed skin. You're sure? He asked, his voice rough against her throat. I've never been more sure of anything, Harper said, and then there were no more words, just touch and sensation and love made physical. Afterward, wrapped in Keith's arms in sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent, Harper felt something click into place. This was where she belonged, not because of the luxury or the money, but because Keith was here. Because when he looked at her, she saw her future reflected in his eyes. Move in with me, Keith said, his fingers tracing patterns on her spine. Harper propped herself up on one elbow. What? Move in with me. I know it's fast, but Harper, I don't want to spend another night without you here. I want to wake up to you every morning. I want to cook terrible sandwiches together and argue about what to watch on TV and build a life with you. Keith's expression was open, vulnerable. Say yes. I have a lease on my apartment. I'll buy out your lease. Keith, okay, I'll pay your rent for the remaining months. Better. What about my jobs, my mom and Marco? I can't just abandon my responsibilities. I would never ask you to. Keep your jobs if they make you happy, though I'd love to help support your family if you'd let me. Or don't keep them and find something you're actually passionate about. Go back to school. Start a business. Whatever you want, Harper, I'll support it. Keith sat up, taking both her hands. I'm not trying to buy you or change you. I'm just asking you to share your life with mine. To let me share mine with yours. Harper looked at their joined hands, at the contrast between her work-roughened fingers and his. She thought about her tiny apartment with its broken elevator and temperamental heating. She thought about her mother's words about not running from happiness because she was scared. Okay, she said. Yes, I'll move in with you. Keith's whoop of joy made her laugh, and then he was kissing her again, pulling her down into the sheets, and Harper let herself fall, knowing he would catch her. The next 6 months were a whirlwind of change. Harper did keep her job at the diner, at least part-time, but she quit pizza delivery and dog walking. Keith had been right that she needed to find her passion, and to her surprise, she discovered it in his work. She started attending meetings with him, learning about real estate development and property management, offering perspectives from someone who'd actually lived in the kinds of buildings he was renovating. You're good at this, Keith said one evening after Harper had spent an hour talking to potential tenants about a new building they were opening in the Bronx. Really good. Have you thought about going back to school, getting your degree? I've thought about it, Harper admitted. But the timing never seems right and the money is not an issue. Harper, I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Let me invest in you, in us. In the future you could build if you had the education and resources. Keith pulled her into his lap, his arms circling her waist. I'm not trying to control you, I'm trying to support you. There's a difference. I know. Harper leaned back against his chest. It's hard for me to accept help. I've always been the one taking care of everyone else. Now you have someone to take care of you. Let me. Keith kissed her temple. Please. Harper enrolled in classes that fall, balancing school with part-time work and learning Keith's business. She discovered she loved the challenge of finding ways to make housing affordable while still maintaining quality, of creating communities where people wanted to live. Keith made her a consultant on his projects, valuing her input and perspective in ways that made Harper feel like a true partner. Marco's science fair was a triumph, his project on sustainable energy winning first place in the city. Keith was there, cheering louder than anyone, and when Marco credited his success partially to Keith's mentorship, Harper had to excuse herself to cry in the bathroom. Her mother found her there, pulling her into a hug. This is good, baby. You're happy. He's good for you. He's everything, Mama. How did I get so lucky? Luck had nothing to do with it. You earned this with your heart. Rosa pulled back, smiling through her own tears. Now come on. They're giving out the awards and your man is saving us seats. A year after they'd met, Keith took Harper back to the restaurant where they'd had their first real conversation. Maria greeted them like family, leading them to the same corner booth. You're being weird, Harper said, watching Keith fidget with his napkin. What's going on? I'm nervous, Keith admitted. Turns out billionaires get nervous too. Who knew? Keith, you're scaring me. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right, actually, and that's terrifying in its own way. Keith reached across the table, taking her hand. Harper, this year with you has been the best of my life. You've challenged me and supported me and loved me in ways I didn't know I needed. You've made me better. You've done the same for me, Harper said softly. I want to keep doing it. Forever, if you'll let me. Keith slid out of the booth, and Harper's heart stopped as he dropped to one knee. He pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a ring that took her breath away. It wasn't ostentatious or huge, just a perfect sapphire surrounded by small diamonds, elegant and timeless. Harper Rivera, I'm asking you to take a chance on the rest of our lives. Marry me. Build an empire with me. Grow old with me. Let me love you for every day we have left. Keith's voice cracked slightly. Please say yes. Harper was crying openly now, nodding before she could find words. Yes. Yes, of course yes. Keith slipped the ring on her finger, then stood, pulling her into his arms for a kiss that felt like a promise. The entire restaurant erupted in applause, Maria appearing with champagne she'd clearly had waiting. I knew it, she said, hugging them both. I told him when he came to ask for my blessing that you two were meant to be. You asked Maria for her blessing, Harper asked Keith. She's known me since I was a kid. Of course I asked her. Keith kissed Harper's forehead. I also asked your mother and brother. Marco told me I'd better treat you right or he'd invent something to make my life miserable. I believe him. That's my brother. Harper laughed through her tears. I can't believe you got everyone in on this. It's not just my family now. It's ours. And family gets included in the big moments. They were married 6 months later in a ceremony that blended both their worlds. The venue was elegant, but not ostentatious. The guest list including Keith's business associates, alongside Harper's neighbors from her old building. Marco walked Harper down the aisle while Rosa wept openly in the front row. Keith's siblings stood up with him, and Harper's best friend from the diner stood with her. "You clean up nice for a pizza delivery girl," Keith said when Harper reached him, his voice thick with emotion. "You're not so bad yourself for a billionaire," Harper whispered back. The ceremony was short and sweet, focused on the vows they'd written themselves. Keith promised to always see Harper for who she was, not where she came from. Harper promised to challenge him and support him and love him through every success and failure. When the officiant pronounced them married, Keith dipped Harper into a kiss that made the crowd cheer. The reception was a blur of dancing and laughter and joy. Harper watched Keith spin her mother around the dance floor, watched Marco attempt to flirt with one of Keith's nieces, watched two worlds that should have been separate blend seamlessly into one. "What are you thinking about?" Keith asked, pulling Harper into his arms for a slow dance. How none of this should have worked. How every logical reason said we were too different, from opposite sides of an impossible divide. And yet here we are, Harper agreed. Turns out love doesn't care much about logic or class differences. Love just cares about finding the right person. Keith kissed her softly. "I found mine in a penthouse during a rainstorm, dripping water on my floor and nearly breaking my favorite vase. I found mine when he caught that vase and looked at me like I mattered." Harper smiled against his lips. "Best delivery I ever made. Best tip I ever gave." They laughed together, swaying to music that seemed written just for them. Around them, their combined families and friends celebrated, proof that the divides society drew between people were nothing compared to the bridges love could build. 2 years into their marriage, Harper graduated with her business degree, Keith and her entire family in the audience cheering. She'd already started her own nonprofit focused on affordable housing education, teaching people from low-income neighborhoods how to navigate real estate, understand their rights as tenants, and eventually become property owners themselves. Keith provided the funding and connections, but the vision was all Harper's. "I'm so proud of you," Keith said that night, holding Harper close in the home they'd built together. They'd moved from the penthouse to a brownstone in Brooklyn, something with more character and room to grow. "We did this together," Harper said. "I couldn't have done any of it without you." "Yes, you could have. You've always been strong enough. I just got lucky enough to be there while you did it." Harper turned in his arms, her hand moving to rest on her stomach where a secret was just beginning to grow. "How do you feel about being there for something else?" Keith's eyes widened. "Harper, are you saying I'm pregnant? About 6 weeks. I wanted to be sure before I told you." Keith's whoop of joy echoed through the house, and then he was spinning her around, laughing and crying at the same time. "We're having a baby. We're going to be parents. Terrifying, right? Terrifying and perfect." Keith set her down gently, his hands cradling her face. "Our kid is going to be so loved, so supported. We're going to give them everything." "Not everything," Harper corrected. "We're going to give them what matters. Love, stability, the understanding that where you come from doesn't determine where you can go. That class and money are just constructs, but family and character are real. You're going to be an amazing mother. We're going to be amazing parents," Harper said. "Together." Their daughter was born on a spring morning when the city was coming back to life after winter. They named her Alina Rose after both their mothers, and she had Keith's gray eyes and Harper's dark hair. Marco, now in college studying engineering, came home to meet his niece, holding her with the careful reverence of someone who understood how precious she was. "She's perfect," Rosa said, tears streaming down her face as she held her granddaughter. "Just perfect." "She really is," Keith agreed, his arm around Harper as they watched their family's coup over Alina. "We made something pretty incredible." "We did," Harper said. But then again, we always were pretty incredible together. Years passed in a blur of happiness and challenges, of building businesses and raising Alina and eventually her younger brother, Daniel. Harper's nonprofit expanded to multiple cities, providing resources and education to thousands of families. Keith's real estate empire grew, but it grew with purpose, each project designed to make communities better rather than just turn a profit. They went back to Maria's restaurant for every anniversary, sitting in the same booth where Keith had proposed. Alina and Daniel would run around the space, playing hide and seek between tables while Maria spoiled them with sweets. Keith would hold Harper's hand and marvel at how far they'd come. "Do you ever think about that day we met?" Harper asked on their 10th anniversary, "when I almost broke your vase, all the time, best near disaster of my life." Keith lifted her hand, kissing her knuckles. "You changed everything for me, Harper. Before you, I was successful but empty. Now I'm just grateful." "Same. You showed me that the walls I'd built to protect myself were actually keeping me trapped. You taught me that accepting help and love wasn't weakness." Harper smiled. "You taught me that class differences are only real if we let them be. We built something better than either of us could have alone. We built a family, a life, a future." Harper leaned her head on Keith's shoulder. "We built love." Alina and Daniel came running back to the table then, demanding attention and dessert and stories. Keith pulled his children into his lap while Harper watched, her heart so full it hurt. This was what mattered, not the money or the success or the empire they'd built. Just this, her family together, happy and whole. That night, lying in bed with Keith's arms around her, Harper thought about the girl she'd been, running through the rain with pizza deliveries, just trying to survive. She thought about how terrified she'd been to fall for someone from a different world, how certain she'd been that class differences were insurmountable. She'd been wrong. Love hadn't just disappeared those differences. Love had shown them that the differences were never real in the first place. They'd both come from struggle and hard work and determination. They'd both understood what it meant to fight for what mattered. The number in their bank accounts had changed, but who they were at their core remained the same. "I love you," Harper whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Keith murmured back, his lips brushing her temple. "Thank you for taking that delivery to my penthouse. Thank you for saying yes to lunch and to moving in and to forever." "Thank you for catching that vase," Harper said. "Thank you for seeing me. For loving me despite every reason we shouldn't have worked." "We worked because we were meant to," Keith said simply. "Some things are just inevitable. You and me. We were inevitable from the moment you looked up at me with those eyes." Harper turned in his arms, kissing him deeply, pouring a decade of love and gratitude into it. When they broke apart, she settled back against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Forever," she said. "Forever," Keith agreed. And in the brownstone in Brooklyn, filled with family and love and proof that class differences disappeared when love was real, two people from opposite worlds slept wrapped around each other, their future stretching bright and beautiful before them. Because in the end, love didn't care about penthouse apartments or studio walk-ups, about billions or barely scraping by. Love just cared about finding the right heart to hold on to, and never letting go. Harper and Keith had found that in each other, and they'd built something no amount of money could buy and no class divide could break. They'd built home.